And I was like, can you turn your light off? And she goes, what are you saying? And I go, can you not understand me? She goes, what are you saying? She gets like visibly like concerned or fearful, and she starts getting up and like distancing herself from me. And I go, what's wrong? Like, she's like, I can't understand you. And I go, can you turn the light off? She goes, I can't understand you. And then I go, wow. And then I wake up again a second time, and then all the lights are on again. And I try to wake her up, and I'm like, that was weird. I go, hey, did you turn the lights on? Like a repeat. And she goes, and she immediately this time, I know. Oh my God. She immediately this time goes, what are you saying? And I go, oh shit, not this again. Fuck. And I go, can you really not understand what I'm saying? And she goes, and she gets out of bed immediately this time. She goes against the wall like she's a scared animal or something. And she goes, what are you saying? What are you saying? And then my whole dad's side of the family comes in the room. Whoa. And they go, what are you saying? What are you saying?
Have you done a lot of podcasts before or not really?
No. I've done some, usually a lot more like when we drop an album, it gets real busy, and then it's like a dry spell because I'm just touring and doing other stuff.
Have you been on a really bad one? Don't drop names, but like really...
I won't throw anybody under the bus, but I definitely have been on.
What constitutes a bad podcast, just out of pure curiosity?
People with really bad questions that like they clearly haven't done any research, or they just ask like the most vague, open-ended question that's like
what's an example of a question like that, would you say? Just like
I'm trying to remember.
Tell me about yourself.
I had one the other day, and they were just like, tell us about your music. And I'm just like,
oh, okay.
Perfect. Like, what does that even mean? What about her?
Like,
I don't
in what
know.
way?
Yeah. And I think having like a creative mind, I almost have to get narrowed into something. It helps, because if they say something that vague and open, my mind goes into like 10 different simulations at the same time.
I just freeze up, play possum, play dead. I'm like, what do I even do?
Yeah.
In that moment,
Or if people watch, these are like all the questions you have written down. I'm
like, scrap it all, throw it away.
Tell us about your music.
We're rescheduling.
Or they'll ask me
That's
like
one question on a sheet of paper. I'm like, fuck.
They'll ask me like, and this isn't a bad question necessarily. This is just more of a personal, like, maybe handicap mentally, but they'll be like, tell us a funny story of something that happened during the creation of the album, or what music you were listening to. And I feel like maybe it's just because I smoked so much weed in my early 20s, it's like I cannot, like, I don't think that way. Like, I can't just pull out random memory. I have to kind of go down like a conversational path, and something has to connect to something else, and then the file cabinet with the memories opens.
I often wonder, like, during my formative years, for like my frontal lobe, just like the partying that I did, if that affects me to this day. Probably so. I would say
there's probably some minor damage.
Do you remember the legal weed that they would sell at like No?
The illegal weed?
Yeah, so like there were these smoke shops, right? And in my hometown, a lot of people worked in like the oil field and stuff, so they'd get drug tested.
Where are you from?
Corpus Christi, South Texas.
Okay, I'm from San Antonio.
Oh,
so we probably had the same laws or whatever.
General, So like these guys who worked in the oil field, whatever, who would get drug tested, they couldn't smoke weed, but they started making this synthetic weed that they would just sell at like little smoke shops.
I know what you're talking about, like Space. It was called Space.
Something like that, and they called it like legal.
I smoked it.
I smoked it. I know my brain is fried.
It was bad.
You know, it was terrible. Like, I feel like it's adjacent to bath salts, like, almost.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I've never done bath salts, but my experience seems shockingly similar. I was watching a zombie film with my friends at the time, and I smoked whatever the hell that stuff was, and his dog was like a puppy, but big, but still like a puppy in its mind, and it was really not behaved well, like he hadn't trained it at all or anything. And so the puppy was just rambunctious all the time, and it was just like gnawing on my arm. And I was just like, at first I'm like, oh, he's just playing, he's a cute dog. But then my mind like turned, because I was on this
might be a zombie.
Fucking fake weed stuff. And then I start looking at the dog like side-eyed. I'm like, do I have to kill him before he kills me? Like, these are the thoughts. And then I go, I'm going home.
Literally, at that point, like,
then,
it's time to pack it up.
I think it was the zombie movie ambiance of the background that was probably not helping that.
Right, yeah. No, I did acid and watched Midsummer one time, and that was a terrible decision. That was horrible. And then I told my friend that I'm with, I'm like, this is bad vibes right now. We got to change it. They put on The Lighthouse, if you're familiar.
Was that the black and white one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's no better. It's equally weird.
I didn't watch that one because every time I came to it, I was like, I kind of want to watch it, but then I was like, do I want to be in a weird mood right now? Not really. And then I skip it.
It's off-putting. Like, it's like you feel uncomfy. You know what I mean? So like, you got to be in a very specific, like, I don't even know what you have to be in to like watch that. Like, what's the right circumstances? Maybe none. It wasn't that though. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you got to be on the right concoction of things.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't that. Well, with that said, how'd you meet Anthony?
Oh, Anthony.
He's the one who introed us for this.
Yeah. Anthony from Papa Roach sent me a text for people watching, and he's like, you should check out this alternative podcast. Rebecca's really cool. And so he definitely gave you major props.
Aww,
and then I checked it out on Instagram, and I was like, oh, this looks great. I'm gonna check it out. But Anthony, I met him when we went on tour with Papa Roach.
Oh, when was that?
It was before the pandemic, so I don't know, maybe 2 years before the pandemic or a year.
Sick.
But we went on like 2 or 3 tours with them.
Oh, was it just y'all, or were there other bands with you guys too?
There were other bands. I can't remember on which tour. Like earlier, I'm just the worst memory.
Yeah. I'm like, what's your favorite tour ever? Huh. So you guys formed around like the peak of the emo era, I would say, honestly, from my research.
Oh, formed? Yeah, formed. Yeah.
How did
the peak of the emo era?
I think it was like the prime, if you ask me.
I like that you call it the emo era. That's amazing.
I mean, in my life, it's still the emo era.
Yeah.
It never really ended, but some may say, like, for me, I feel like Warped Tour, like, 2007 to like 2012 was like the peak.
Yes, yeah. That's actually, okay, so when I first started singing, that totally makes sense because we played the Warped Tour Battle of the Bands.
Oh,
that was like a big deal at the time for us because we were a garage band just straight out of high school, and we actually won. Like, we were in the top 4 that they picked to fly out to LA to like showcase for all these labels and stuff.
Do you remember out of how many total like bands? What year was this to?
This was probably 2007.
Oh, good year.
Maybe 2006, somewhere in there. And I had, so I don't know how many bands. It was like, I don't know, maybe I was hundreds, if not over 1,000
That's like
or
the
two.
Chiodos days. Like, everyone wanted to be like a garage band that, like, you know, made it big. Obviously, you guys did. But
yeah.
Like, you know,
it's funny looking back, but the week before, we had fired our singer.
Oh shit!
and it was like our 4th or 5th singer at that point, and he's a great dude. We just had some differences and things, but. The next week, I get a phone call, and they're like, "Congrats, you won the Battle of the Bands!
Like, oh no.
$10,000 in gear and prizes, and we're gonna fly out to LA and label show."
And
I was like, and I made the mistake of being like, "We just fired our singer."
Oh no!
And they go, "Oh, it's okay. We'll pick the next runner-up band." I was like, "No. I mean, I'm singing now." From the drums, we'll make it happen. We'll make it work. So that was my first show singing, was from behind the drum kit in LA.
Wait, so you did both simultaneously?
I did. It was
that's
horrible.
Honestly impressive as fuck.
It was impressively bad. It was not good.
Damn.
Not good. Because we were very proggy at the time, meaning like there's a ton of drum parts. It wasn't Phil Collins like laying it back. So it sucked. It was like really bad. So bad that our guitar player that I started the band with, after that show in LA, he quit the band.
Oh, no.
It was bad.
So you start playing guitar too, you're all 3 at once.
Yeah, so that was the start of my singing career.
Holy shit. Had you ever sang before that, or not really? Like, did you know you were good at the time?
No, I did not.
Really?
I was basically, sometimes in the shower, I would like hit a note, and I was like, ooh, I think that was good. I think that was pretty dope.
Literally me in the shower, but not at all.
Yeah, and then I'd like record myself on like a little tape player or recorder, and then I'd listen back, and I would get so like weirded out. You know how you don't like the sound of your own voice at first?
Yeah.
And then I'd just be like, and I'd stop it. And then I'd be like, nah. And then I'd go back to the drums. And even my parents, who are the most supportive people in my life, were like, everything I'd go after, they'd be like, yeah, go Johnny.
Yeah.
When I talked about singing, it was the one thing they're like, are you sure you want to do
Really?
that? But I was a very accomplished drummer at the time, and I think they were just like, are you sure? Like, you've been working so hard to do this.
Yeah.
You got these offers to go tour the world and like get paid well.
Oh, did you?
And I turned them down.
From what bands do you remember? Like,
there was this, like, it was a Christian band at the time, like, because I grew up playing in the youth band in the church.
Oh, cool.
That's kind of how I got my chops.
Yeah.
And they came through town, and their drummer didn't make it, so I filled in for them, like, last minute. And they were like, dude, you played all the songs, like, great. Do you want to go, like, tour the world with us?
Oh, shit.
And my parents were like, yes, take the gig.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I just saw people that did that, and they kind of would get stuck on a path. And I was like, I want my own music.
Like in a niche kind of.
I don't want to play for someone else. I want to make my own shit.
That's dope. Did you ever doubt that you would make it from there? Like, and did you ever regret not going with them? Like initially?
No regrets. I made the right choice, but
sure.
it was not apparent at first. I mean, it took years. It was years of doubt and like moments where you're like, did I make the right choice? Am I, because like you're gonna have many failures along the way, plenty of doubt. But I think you could probably relate to this with your own life and your podcast. It's kind of that fuck you attitude that's like, no, I'm gonna make this work.
Delusional optimism is what I call it. Like literally my whole life, like I've been that way. Even growing up, my parents are like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to be? And I was like, look, I don't know, but I'm gonna be rich. I'm gonna be successful. I just know.
That's
They're
right.
Like, but doing what? I'm like,
that's the attitude.
You have to.
That's the attitude.
You have to, yeah.
I mean, I think that's like the most important thing in the world. Everything follows that.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn skills. Everything can change and evolve and adapt. But if you don't have that attitude, you just won't stick with it long enough to be able to evolve into all those things.
You gotta become obsessed, honestly, is how I feel. Like, just genuinely, like, you're gonna be successful and just burn your ships and just go. But,
oh, yeah.
So you didn't join 100%. The Christian band. You didn't tour the world with them. So what happened then?
Then we took like a 1976 Vandura RV out of like a field. It was my bass player's grandmother's from like the 70s, and she just left it in a field. There was raccoons living in it, and like there was plants growing in it. He literally was like, I think I can get it running, because it was like this old. I'm not a super car guy, but it was like, I think it was a Cummins or something engine that was just like solid. He's like, oh, I think this will hold up. Yeah. So he got it running again, and we like cleaned it out, and then we started touring, and literally we would just negotiate it. I was the agent at the time for our band. I'd make cold calls to like get us booked, and I'd just get us enough money to get to the place and get to the next place.
That's really impressive. Do you remember what you would say on the calls?
My main strategy was bug the hell out of the booking agent until he like had to say yes to make me go away.
Me doing door to door, quite literally.
Yeah.
Just keep showing up to their house. Like, what else can you do, really? Worst they can do is say no, and then you just move on.
Right. I was like, I don't care if you put us on a Tuesday night, just put us on the calendar. I'm going to keep calling you, man. I'll call you from a different number.
He's like, bye. You're like, I will show up.
I was determined. And I was a very... maybe you can relate to this. I don't know, because we were talking before the podcast about, your door-to-door sales and stuff. But I was very, and I wouldn't say shy, but I was a little more introverted, a little bit more people-pleasing. Like, I wasn't, like, the person to do that.
I very much relate to that, yes.
Yeah, and then my mom was such an influence on my life, because she was such a fireball, and, like, she was like that too when she was younger, she said, but then something switched where she was just like aggressive in a good way, where she just got shit done, like didn't take no for an answer, assertive, and then that switch just turned on in me, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted this, and like nothing was going to get in my way. So you just kind of turn into a different person, like in a good way.
I would tell my reps that all the time, like my sales reps. It's like a different persona, Like if you're on the doors and like you take everything to heart personally, like you're not going to make it. But you have to become like your alter ego,
Yeah.
That doesn't care about stuff like that. That's more confident. Because like, no, naturally I was so shy.
Yeah.
Like, very introverted. And obviously, like, having a podcast, everyone's like, shut up. Like, no, you're not. But I was, believe it or not, guys. But yeah.
Really?
Oh, 100%. Growing up, I was, like, so quiet and just, like, shy. But I feel like I knew if I wanted to succeed past a certain point, like, you can't be that way. Like, you have to, like you said, be assertive and kind of be more outspoken.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, so what led you to a podcast specifically?
Well, that's a great question. Very, very long story short.
Okay.
I was in door-to-door, obviously, and it's just very mentally taxing. You're traveling all the time, and like I felt like I needed a creative outlet because it consumed my whole life. Like, especially having the sales team that I did, and I was always helping them, whatever. So a friend of mine, Justin, had a podcast, and people always told me, like, you have crazy stories, like, you should share them, whatever. So watching him do his, I kind of asked for some tips, and I was like, should I do it? And he's like, just fuck it, just do it. So I did.
Okay.
And it started as like a creative outlet, but then I guess people liked it. I started to get guests. Anthony was one of my first guests, which was dope that he believed in it that early on.
Anthony from Pop Roach?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Literally one of my first guests ever. Just like,
really?
I think he was like my fourth one. Like, I did not know what I was doing. Like, bless his heart. He was so patient. But just the sweetest soul.
Yeah,
and,
he's great, dude.
Yeah, and from there it just grew like way faster than I thought it would. Like, I had high hopes, but I never thought I didn't know if it would be a full-time thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it came about, though. It was like a creative outlet. Then the job that I was at, the further I moved up, the more I saw it was just kind of like shady. Like when I was in upper management, like hearing more things within the company that I didn't really align with, and like the inner workings of it, I knew I wanted to leave. Okay. So I just kind of saved up enough to do podcasting full-time. Here we are.
Are you enjoying it?
I love it. I think it's fucking sick, especially getting to travel, like meet different people. Yeah. It's like door to door, but just not dangerous. You know, not no fear of getting abducted by a man with clowns in his house and no furniture.
Yeah,
so eliminating that is nice. Not being chased by pit bulls is great. Sweating in the heat of the summer, it's it's good.
Oh, God! So I did door to door, not sales. Well, I guess it was kind of like sales.
Yeah.
I grew up like kind of in the church when I was younger. Like my parents just kind of kept me going to church camps and things. I guess they figured, I was a good influence.
Yeah.
And so I went on some mission trip when I was a kid. Oh my gosh, hold on. Do you see that tiny little spider just like going down? You want me to get it?
Yeah, please. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
It went like in front of my face. I would freak out.
Got
it. The headline is Rebecca destroys a podcast set.
Little intruder.
Yeah.
I went door to door on like a mission trip, and it was actually in Nashville. I lived, in San Antonio most of my life.
It's kind of full circle.
Yeah, it is full circle. Yeah. And so we came here in the summer, same thing like you're saying, like sweating your ass off.
Were you wearing like a little fit, like a little like button up in the?
No. We weren't like Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. We were just non-denominational, vanilla Christianity.
Yeah, just your run of the mill.
Your run of the mill American Christianity, and we just it was so funny. We just go. I don't know, like in middle school or something.
Oh, really? That young, damn.
Yeah, I'll never forget this one experience where. And looking back, I'm like, this is just the strangest thing to go door to door talking to people about something like religion.
Anything at all. If you really think about it, just sight unseen, just knocking on a door is kind of crazy.
Right. And then the people there, though, to be fair, like, they were good people. They really had good intentions. That they thought they were spreading good things. And people, so I think the intentions were good. But I remember going to this one door and this beast of a dude. He was probably 300 something pounds and just had a wife beater on and like, shorts and just stank of alcohol. Oh, and he shows up at the door and you could tell he had like tears in his eyes, but like angry looking tears.
Oh no.
And you're like, does this guy just kill someone? Or
it's an emotional roller coaster.
And he was just like, I'm about to fucking kill myself. But like right as he opened the door, and I guess he just had found either his girl cheating on him or some. I didn't know what to think at that age, but now putting it together at this age, I'm like, okay, it was probably something because he was mentioning his girlfriend,
some like philandering of some sort.
Yeah, and he was like on the edge of doing something really bad to someone else or himself, and so I was just like. Do you know about Jesus? And I'm just like sitting there wide-eyed, like
you're like, this looking is the moment. This is it. Yeah,
and it was just me and one other kid, like the chaperone or the adult was like way down the street.
Oh no!
And this guy's like, I'm about to get my gun, or he was like saying some crazy shit, and we're just like, okay, I'm sorry you're feeling like that, And you know what's crazy though? I think it was looking back, at this moment, like. Whether people call them God moments or whatever, I have different thoughts now, but it still was just like this perfect moment where like our innocence of like almost just trying to be nice, like really like brought him down. Like something about, I don't know, being like childlike or innocent and like it really just like calmed him down. And then like an adult came and then he started talking to him and it turned to be like a very positive ending to the story. But had we not been there, who knows what would have happened.
It seems like he was pretty close to doing something drastic. I feel like if it were me, if I were him, I would see that as a sign for sure. Like 2 kids like come talking about like religion, whatever, at my door, like right as I'm about to like
do something crazy.
Come on, like what are the chances?
I know.
Honestly.
It's weird.
I feel like that makes it all worth it too. Like even if like everyone else was kind of rude, like helping that one person is kind of sick.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget it. It was a good experience, but
he's doing okay.
In general, it was a weird thing to go to people's doors.
Yeah, sometimes like I'd be sitting in houses and I'm like, I'm really in someone's house. This is kind of crazy. But,
especially, you know, being a female, I feel like you're just way more, I don't know, there's just weird dudes, like, that I can imagine you, like, going to their house. You were I mean, before we started rolling, you were talking about a guy who had creepy clowns like everywhere.
Crochet clowns and just a singular folding chair.
Was it in front of the TV or something?
No, there wasn't even a TV. Nothing. Not a just the clowns. That's it. And just a little chair. Yeah, just a little.
That's odd.
It's like you almost have to act fearless though in those situations because they want you to act scared, and I think a lot of people like that in a weird way.
Like feed off of it.
Exactly. So there was this one guy. I was training another rep at the time, and like it was in the country. I walk up his driveway. I start talking to him, and he's like, "Bold of you to be out here as a girl alone." I'm like, "Bold of you to let me here alone when you're just here by yourself." You know what I mean? Just I'm like, I know I'm not the killer. Like honestly, I just showed up at your house. Honestly, it's gonna. You never know.
Yeah.
You have to just like act like you're not scared because like they'll try for sure.
Yeah, that's good.
But anywho, so you didn't go on tour with the Christian van. You get the van going. You start touring. How was it at first? Did you guys have a pretty good turnout, or was it a little slow to get started?
I mean, yeah, it took years of just kind of slugging it out in the trenches, is what it felt like. Dive bars, you know, playing to people who didn't give a fuck about your music and didn't really they wanted you to hear a cover song, you know. So that's when we just did some zany stuff back in the day where we just try to get people's attention to make them. We built these trash can suits. Looking back, it's so ridiculous
now. That's iconic though, yeah.
But we dressed up our guitar players in like trash can suits, and like they had helmets with like pans on them that we would, and me and the singer and bass player would just like start banging on them, and we'd have these percussive like moments where in the middle of a song.
That's honestly creative though. I mean, you gotta do something to stand out, right? Like whatever.
Yeah, and it made people stop and look, and it worked. I mean, we're like, if we can just get their attention, make them stop what they're doing, and then we'll just make sure they walk away with a CD. And go to like Deep Ellum in Dallas, which is kind of like the 6th Street of Dallas, and we would just hand out CDs as soon as a show would get out. And you just watch people like, okay, dude, and you hand them one and they walk down like 10 feet and just chunk it in the trash. Aww. And you're just like, you know, you're doing anything you can because you don't know necessarily what the right move is to do. You just have to try stuff.
Yeah. Well, this was before social media, really, right? Like,
yeah, it was like the MySpace era, but that wasn't really breaking bands necessarily.
I feel like it wasn't. Yeah, I don't really remember like finding artists on there.
Right.
You know? Like once I liked someone already,
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we tried it all back in the day, and we were just very DIY and just kind of aggressive, and over time, you know, it just you just write better music and do better things, and then things start catching on. Do
you remember your first fan? Like the first person who really, really fucked with you and you were like, oh shit, like, I might be doing something?
Yeah. We had this girl, Kathy, like in West Texas, who was just like so sweet, and she was like the, would just, I don't know, would like make us food when we come to town or different shows, and like would help, you know, set up our t-shirts, or, you know, just people would kind of be like helpers and make things happen, and would offer us a place to stay, and we'd sleep on the couches and the floor in the guest room.
That's so sweet.
Yeah, so that was one person that came to mind, but we had a lot of great people like that in different cities.
Do you remember the first moment when you really felt like, oh shit, like we're gonna make it, like we're good, you know, we're not like gonna have to put trash cans on our feet. Like this might be something.
I don't have to be a like, sideshow anymore.
Yeah, you don't have to do this anymore, don't worry.
Oh yeah, so I mean, the biggest moment that stands out in my mind, there was quite a few landmarks along the way, but we were playing, this is before we got signed, we were playing a festival called Aftershock.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, big one out in California.
Yeah, it is a really
It's a Danny Wimmer festival, and we played like one of the smaller stages, but it was to like 800 people maybe.
Oh shit.
And we fucking crushed it. I felt so good. I was like walking off the stage just like, hell yeah. I was on cloud 9, and as soon as I walked off the stage, this guy like shakes my hand before I even get down. He goes, great fucking set, man. Like, really good. And it turned out it was Danny Wimmer, the guy who runs all the biggest festivals in the nation, and for rock and metal. And I thought he was like the sound guy or something. I was like, thanks, dude. And just kept walking.
Like a random fan. You're like,
I appreciate it, you know? And then my manager, he was with us at the time, he came over and he's like, dude, do you know who said, like, hi to you earlier? I was like, what? The sound guy? He's like, no, that was Danny Wimmer. Like, the guy who, this whole festival is, like, his deal. I was like, oh, sick. And then I was doing an interview just kind of like this, maybe 2 or 3 hours later in the media tent. And then in the middle of the interview, that guy, Danny Wimmer, walks in and he, like, blocks the camera. And I'm like, well, that's kind of rude. And he's like, and he totally hijacks the interview in the best of ways. He goes, how would you like to play main stage tomorrow? Oh, and it was like in front of 15,000 people. Going from 800 to 15,000. I was like, and I looked at the guy that was interviewing me. I was like, yeah, I think we'll do it. We'll cancel our plans. Yes.
I think I can free up some space, I guess.
Yeah. And so we come back the next day, play main stage. On all the side stage, I just remember there being like agents, label people all with their arms crossed. They had like, some people had clipboards and stuff. Like, they just look like people in the industry, you know? And they were all side stage just watching like, who's this band that Danny decided to put on main stage. And I remember like, it wasn't like our best show ever, but I still felt pretty good.
Yeah.
And I walked off kind of being like, okay, I think things are turning now, you know?
Who else was playing main stage that year? Do you remember?
That year, I feel like I should know this.
What year was this? Like around what time?
That was 2013 or 2014.
It's been a while. It's like a 10 years
because we got signed like right after that.
So I don't blame you for not remembering. Yeah. You probably played a lot of festivals since then.
Oh god, there's so many. We played Aftershock like a few times since then too. I want to say it was like Lamb of God.
Actually, you probably look it up. I'm actually curious. Like, I don't know.
It was either 2013 or 2014.
Okay, let's see. Sevenfold, iconic. Asking Alexandria, All That Remains, A Day to Remember. They were kind of starting to pop off.
Oh, yeah.
Megadeth. Let's see.
These POD, Steel Panthers, Buck Cherry, Korn, Shinedown, Papa Roach. We were with Papa Roach that day. I didn't know that. So
wait, that's actually real. Invisible String Theory.
Yeah, so we must have played the next day with Five Finger, Volbeat, Day to Remember, Avenged Sevenfold, Falling in Reverse.
That's sick. Ooh.
So that must have been the next day because we played both days because he asked us to come back.
I want to say, wasn't that like right when Ronnie Radke like got out of jail and had his like comeback moment? It was around 2013 too, I think.
I didn't follow that closely, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I think that was a big time for Falling in Reverse. Damn, that's crazy. This is a great lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of the start for us.
Yeah. So you guys play Aftershock, the main stage. That's sick. What happens from there? Like, what's the next phase?
The next phase was like we signed a deal, and
with who?
11-7 was the name at the time, and now they go by Better Noise for like our division. They have like Motley Crue and Papa Roach.
Oh, pretty cool.
So that's probably, and Five Finger Death Punch. That's probably how we got on tour with Five Finger and Papa Roach. You know, they say. You think when you get signed, you've like made it. A lot of bands feel like that, but really when you get signed, that's when the real work starts. That's when you're really building the brand and the business and the art. And so then it was just like tour. It was like we said yes to everything because we've been working so hard to get to that moment. And we learned very quickly after that album that you can't say yes to everything because we would go from like a full US tour to a Canada tour straight to a European tour and then we go to Japan, Australia, and we took like hardly any breaks. I got married right before we got signed.
Oh shit.
Bad idea.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was, someone I met when we met young,
like
or young-ish. Well, it was like early 20s, maybe like 21. Okay. It still felt kind of young to me.
That's very young, honestly. Like.
And I thought I was doing the right thing, or whatever.
Like societally, they make it seem as if like
looking back, it's like I just have so much more worldly wisdom now. I would not have made that choice, but I think that we just toured so much. I was just like, bye.
She's like, wait, what?
Yeah, and then. We just toured our asses off and then kind of got burnt out and then made the next album, tried to take some time off to kind of recoup. went through kind of a divorce with that whole thing.
Right.
Clearly had to set the clean palette, write a new album, and then we got Grammy nominated on that next album.
Oh, that's amazing.
And we got like 3 in the rock category, which up until that time I think was like a big deal to have that many
That's
at once.
a huge deal, yeah.
But then we didn't win any of them. We just got nominated for 3.
Like out of everyone, you gotta think there's a lot of like rock bands out there, you know. So
we
it's
like
a
to
pretty
say
deal.
3-time Grammy losers.
Oh my god, still nominated though. So
yeah.
what was that feeling like? Do you remember when you found out?
Excuse me. We were all extremely hungover from a show in I think Warsaw, Poland, and we were driving out of Poland to somewhere, and we were all just sleeping on like bench seats in a Sprinter van. And I just remember Mark like waking us up, and we're just like dead, and he's like, "Hey guys." I was like, "What?" You know, kind of pissed.
Yeah.
That he's waking me up. He's like, "We just got nominated for 3 Grammys," and I was like,
Shit.
"For real?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Cool, let's talk about it in the morning."
Like, just give me a second.
And then we went back to sleep.
Damn.
Then I woke up the next morning, I'm like, and I was just, my phone was blowing
You're like, did
up
that really
with
happen?
texts and stuff.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
And then from there, you know, COVID happened after that. So we were all living in different states. I was living in Louisiana at the time. Dan and Mark were living in San Antonio, and Ben was living in Phoenix, Arizona. So that was really not a fun time. I think that whole the Spirits album and working like so far apart was just really annoying. It's like writing an album over Google Chats or something. It just
over
it
GroupMe.
sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so annoying to like just being in the same room. Sometimes it's just efficient. You get that emotional
Like an
body
energy
language.
thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's the quick body language stuff that you just remove. So then we did that album, and then kind of came out of the whole scamdemic bullshit, and then went into this next album, which they did Carnal, and then I don't know. I feel like I'm like tooting my horn or something, but the first song we came back out of this because we kind of came out of a low period with Spirits. We came out with a #1, and so this record's off to a great start.
Yeah, I saw that. It was like #1 on Octane and like a bunch of places from what I saw.
Yeah. Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, it's doing great. So we're feeling good now.
What do you think is the difference between that song and the previous album that you feel didn't do as well?
I think the last album, it was like a deeper fan favorite kind of album. Like it was very dense. It was like it wasn't as feel good of an album. It was just a little darker, denser. So it kind of made sense that like for certain fans it was their favorite album, but for people kind of on the periphery of our fan base or just kind of know of us, they may not like it because it's not like a first listen album. It's like it's a digger. Whereas this new album, it's like every song's much more immediate. It's it's just easier to digest. It's more marketable.
Did you know an album prior that's what you needed to do, or did you kind of like, how'd you figure out that was like the right move to make it more marketable?
Yeah, we knew that's what we needed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we, as a band, before every album, we kind of have like a vision quest retreat. Like one time we went to like the Redwoods in California.
I love that.
And we camp out together, and I remember like a mountain lion was stalking me on that trip. That's a whole nother story. But
But pause real quick.
excuse me.
What do you mean stalking? Like,
I mean, I'm not 100% certain, but like I'm almost positive that it was like we were just out at this campsite, and like again doing kind of a vision quest retreat to go, what's the next album going to be like? What kind of colors? What kind of songs do we want to write?
Like I
what
had also smoked synthetic weed, so I don't know.
Yeah, I might have been. I don't know.
Might not have been a mountain lion.
And yeah, right. Could have been a squirrel.
That same dog.
It looked huge.
Yeah, right.
And I went walking down to like the campsite bathrooms or whatever, and there's like no lights, artificial lights. So it's super dark. See all the stars. It's beautiful. And there was like this kind of grassy, real tall grass kind of or wooded area that was along the path. And when I came out of the bathroom, I was coming back, and I've only gotten this a few times in my life, so I knew it was different than just kind of feeling spooked or something.
Yeah.
But the hair on the back of my neck like raised, and I just got a very primitive, like instinctive feeling that something was like watching me or following. And I kind of would stop and like look around, and then I walked a little bit more, and then I heard this kind of like thing, rustling getting closer. And I know mountain lions, at least I think they're in that area, and they attack from behind. Like, you always want to face them.
Oh, no.
And so I turned around, and I never forget, I, like, raised my hands, and I just made, like, the most metal, guttural, like, screams.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, you know, and just ran towards the woods. And I just scurrying went off. And I'm like, something was following me.
You're
like,
better than me. I'm sister, like some Blair Witch shit. I'm way too superstitious. I'm like, some ritualistic. Like,
okay, so you go to like spooky, supernatural.
Sure.
Okay.
100%. Like my co-host, he was telling a story on a recent podcast, and he went to go see Struggle Jennings, like a friend of his and now mine as well, like perform.
Okay.
And there were no hotels left besides one. So he said, I walk into the hotel, the air just feels thick. Like it feels sketchy. Something's off. He asks the concierge, they're like, oh, it's haunted as shit. Like, this place is for sure haunted. Like, you're gonna get possessed, like, 100%. He's like, oh, sick, let me get a room. So he still checks in. I never would have. He said the room's just so creepy. Like, someone definitely died. He goes in the basement. I'm like, why would you ever? He sees, like, all this, like, weird ritualistic, like, he's trying to send me pics. I was like, don't do that. I don't claim this energy. Like, no. But, yeah, so I fully believe that's, like, a real thing. But he, like, did way more than I would have.
What was the name of it?
Ooh, the hotel's in Ohio. I know that, like, a smaller town. I'm trying to
weird shit happens in Ohio, that's for sure.
100%. He's there and he's pretty weird himself. I love him. But,
a lot of weird things come out of Ohio.
but damn, I'll have to ask him. But literally, like, everyone in the town was like, oh no, it's haunted as shit. Like, for sure. Have you ever, like, walked in somewhere and just, like, known? Or do you believe in, like, that kind of stuff?
I have mixed feelings about that, to be honest. I definitely can relate to the experience because I've had it. And there are certain places that feel different, and there's something off, and I think there's something to that. I just always ask myself the question, like, how much of it is like the actual, like, the environment of excuse me, like, what's there versus like what that environment triggers what's in here to just open a door. Because, like, for example, like, I always think through everything I think about, I always put it through, like, this, like, evolutionary biology lens, like how we evolved.
That's pretty smart.
And so I kind of like to backtrack, like, how you would feel, like, in a large cavern where there was multiple entrances. Like, instinctively you would feel, like, concerned because you're kind of vulnerable, like, to predators. Your back not being against a wall, things like that. So you walk into certain environments, I just wonder how much of those, like, how the environment is set up, like, triggers certain instinctual things like that, and then open that door in the mind where, like, the imaginative part of the mind is, like, almost, like, protected us for years or thousands of years.
I wonder if that's kind of like what feng shui is in a way. Like, they like looked into it.
It's like the reverse part of feng shui, exactly.
Yeah, kind of. And they're like, hey, like, maybe there's something we don't. Who knows? Like, just positioning things a certain way to, like, avoid, like, the bad vibes. Yeah,
like, even, like, colors. Like, green is an instinctively, like, calming color because of it's an area that is lush, like, that has life, like grass and trees. And so even just moving where I moved in outside of Nashville, I just felt mentally healthier because it was so green. I loved looking out my window and seeing that. And so I think the reverse is also true. So if there's certain colors that are like the lack of life, like kind of you know, when you create spooky scenarios with Halloween decorations, whatever, you're touching those instinctual triggers. And I think once you touch enough of those triggers, you open, and the reason I think this, you open this kind of Pandora's box of the imagination where, like, when I was a kid, I had an experience in my room that I'll never forget where I was always into, like, angels and demons and spirits, like, because I was raised on the Bible. So I was just interested in that stuff. And so I remember one night being like, I want to see something. Like, I had this, like, this creepy, like, I just had this kind of curiosity. And so I just remember calling out into the darkness, like, I know that's weird, but
no, it's not weird. I just, like, I'm super, so I'm like, oh no,
yeah. I was like, show yourself. That's all I said. I just said it, and I just sat and waited. But you know, when you're a kid, your mind is much more like Play-Doh. I think the doors are much more loose.
That's why they say, like, kids can see more stuff like that when it comes to, like, spirits and stuff, because, like, they're not taught to not yet. You know? It's not like
you haven't blocked it out yet.
Yeah, they don't have, like, the logic or whatever it might be to, like, you know, talk themselves out of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so I remember in the corner of my room, this black like void started forming.
Holy shit.
And I started getting that, you know, hair on the back of the neck feeling, but it started growing, and then I just heard Jonathan.
Oh
like,
my.
And I go, fuck that.
What,
and I pulled
oh my God.
I pulled the sheets over my head, and I was like, nope.
I take it back.
And it was just like, nope, fuck that. And I just remember, I know physically I was pulling sheets over my head, but I think in my mind I was doing the same. Like, my physical action was just a mirror of what I was doing in my brain, which was putting up mental barriers going, nope, that's insanity.
Damn.
Like, across that wall, if I let that door remain open, I'll be a crazy person.
What is that? Is it the philosopher, like a writer? It's like Nietzsche or Nietzsche?
Nietzsche, yeah.
Yeah, he says, like, is it something like the void stares back?
If
Basically?
you
like,
stare into the abyss, the abyss will stare back
which
at you.
Which is kind of what you're describing.
Yeah, and instinctively I think that fear is a protective mechanism, because my Aunt Jenny, who, we have a song called Jenny that was about my sister, and it was kind of a warning to her to not become like my Aunt Jenny, who lost her mind when she was in college, and she was in a crazy home ever since.
Sure.
So she had schizophrenia, and I grew up around that. I've seen where an adult is just seeing things that aren't there. And as a child, it was always odd to me, because my parents would explain to me how she was weird, but to me it wasn't weird. I just thought she was playing a fun game, you know? And
well,
so,
it's hard to digest, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, so having been around it and seen it, it's like, I think I just instinctively knew as a kid, like, oh, if I leave that door open, that's the path. Like, to schizophrenia and insanity, because your mind just will fill that void, whether you believe it's actual things coming through like a portal, or I tend to believe it's more like the power of your imagination will, it's like a projector onto a screen. It's like, even though we could see an apparition or a ghost out there, it's really in here. It's just, you see it out there through your eyes like a projection.
It becomes your reality, kind of.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, so you're seeing it, but it's really, it's in here, but you're seeing it out there.
That's actually, I've never heard that take before, but that's very interesting. It's like, people talk about like manifestation, and like your thoughts become your reality. Like, for example, kind of not really similar, but like, I have a family member, and she's very negative. She's gone through like a divorce and all this, and she's like, I'll never find a good man. No one's ever going to love me, da-da-da. I'm like, that's going to become your reality. Like, with that mentality, 100%. It's just going to become your truth. So like, on a different level, it's kind of like your words, your thoughts, they do kind of manifest into what you live, I feel.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you, excuse me, when you know, like the brain is like a computer, they say. And so when you train it to do certain things, or you reward it for like in that experience, had I not listened to my, I think, very natural fear to like go no, and I had like entertained that curiosity further, I might have rewarded my brain to keep doing that.
100%.
And then that could spiral into insanity, like you see in these movies with, you know, horror movies and psychological thrillers.
I believe it. Like, I feel like it's fight or flight, you know, like your body, like, we have those instincts for a reason, and animals have them, and I think a lot of people ignore them, but why? Like, I feel like we definitely have them too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm very much into like the vibe of it all, and just like listening to my instincts and stuff. Like, besides going in the clown house, I guess, and like in sketchy houses. That's for money, so it doesn't count. Like, my instincts were like, get the fuck out, and I'm like, no, I need that commission, sorry. But yeah. Yeah,
that's interesting to me, to think about all the ways that we naturally feel about something, and like there's a wisdom in all those feelings, because we've had thousands of years of evolution or whatever, adapting to feel that way to protect us, right? And then there's like having ambition or a goal. You have to almost unwire,
like bypass
or disassemble or bypass some of those feelings to get to where you want to go. And to me, that's kind of the game of life in a way, is knowing which ones to short circuit and which ones not to.
No, I completely agree. Have you had another supernatural experience besides that, or not really since then?
Yeah, I've had some. I don't know if I would call it supernatural, but it's in that realm of kind of the unexplained. I mean, you tell me, I guess, but I had one really weird one. This one will give me chills to this day. But it wasn't like sinister or anything like evil, but my granddad and my dad it was like basically the boys on that side of the family. It was just my dad and my granddad. Going out with my granddad the next morning to go shooting clay pigeons, what do they call it, you know?
The, like, skeet shooting, I think.
Skeet shooting, yeah.
From Texas. I'm like, well, we both are, I guess. That's what we know.
And I'd never gone with him except when I was like a little kid. So this was a rare event. And he had been diagnosed with dementia. Alzheimer's. Yeah. But he had no signs of Alzheimer's yet. Like, it was very...
How'd they know? Just like a brain scan? Or?
I can't remember because I was probably... This was my early 20s, and I don't remember the details now. But it was... he was just having little slip-ups, but nothing major. You wouldn't really know he had Alzheimer's. I guess he knew enough. But the next morning we were going on this trip, and I think my dad... was like, hey, we're going to wake up at this time, give me the whole itinerary for the next day. So I go to bed. Again, at this point, nothing had happened with my granddad. Everything was completely normal. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I was with my ex at the time. She was sleeping next to me. And I had this dream where I woke up, I was in the same bed, laying next to her, but the lights were on. And I was like, hey, did you turn the lights on? I like woke her up in my dream. She goes, what? I was like, did you turn the lights? She's like, no, just go back to bed. I was like, okay, why are all the lights on? And then I try to wake her up again. I'm like, can you turn your light off? And she goes, what are you saying? And I was like, can you turn your light off? And she goes, what are you saying? And I go, can you not understand me? She goes, what are you saying? She gets like visibly like concerned or fearful, and she starts getting up and like distancing herself from me. And I go, what's wrong? Like, she's like, I can't understand you. And I go, can you turn the light off? She goes, I can't understand you. And then I go, wow. And then I wake up again a second time, and then all the lights are on again. And I try to wake her up, and I'm like, that was weird. I go, hey, did you turn the lights on? Like a repeat. And she goes, and she immediately this time, I know. Oh my God. She immediately this time goes, what are you saying? And I go, oh shit, not this again. Fuck. And then I go, can you really not understand what I'm saying? And she goes, and she gets out of bed immediately this time. She goes against the wall like she's a scared animal or something. And she goes, what are you saying? What are you saying? And then my whole dad's side of the family comes in the room. Whoa. And they go, what are you saying? What are you saying? Holy. And they start like circling in on me. And then I'm against the wall going, you're like, what am I saying? Why can't anyone understand? You know, I'm freaking out. And they're like, what are you saying? And then I wake up again, third time. The lights are off this time. Oh, thank God. And then I go, fuck. I was like, hey, can you understand me? And I wake her up. And she's like, yeah, what? And I'm like, oh God. I had like, and I woke up like sweating, breathing heavy, like with chills. And she goes, yes, what? I was like, just remind me in the morning to tell you about a crazy dream I had. And I go, actually, fuck it. I need to tell you right now. So I tell her the dream. She goes, okay, that's crazy. She goes back to sleep. I look at the time. It was 10:22, which was my weird number. I had all these weird experiences in my life with 22. And in military time, 10:22 is 22:22. And I was just like, I made note of it. I looked at the clock and I was like, okay, this is just weird. I don't know why this is weird, but it feels weird. Doesn't feel like a normal dream. Go back to bed. I get a call in the morning. I'm sorry. Was it 10? No. I'm sorry. It was 2:22, not 10:22. I had a different experience with 10:22. Anyway, it was 2:22 because I remember when I got the call the next morning.
I have like a lot of 222 stuff too. So I'm like, holy shit.
It was just odd, the timing. And I woke up, I get a call going, hey, Johnny, you can go back to bed. You don't have to wake up early. Something happened last night with Granddad. We're going to have to postpone. I'll call you back when I have everything sorted out. I was like, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, he had an episode last night. We've never seen this before. I'll call you back. And I go, that was weird. I hang up the phone. I go, well, I guess I'm not going to this thing. My dad calls back a little bit later, and he goes, yeah, so last night around, sometime around 2 in the morning or so.
Oh, my God.
Around that time that I woke up, he goes, Granddad woke up speaking gibberish. And Baba, and he was getting he was escalating in his frustration of the gibberish, and she woke up in fear for her life, that he was gonna, like, he thought she was someone else, or that he was maybe going to harm her or harm. This had never, anything like this had not happened up until this point. And she got out of the bed, said she couldn't understand what he was saying.
Oh my God.
And she called my dad because she was in fear that something bad was going to happen. So he came over and calmed the situation, and my granddad was just speaking nonsense. So ever since, that's just one of many weird experiences I've had, but that was one where it really just was so directly connected that I was like, okay, you can't write this off to coincidence.
No denying that at
This
all.
is just, there's some kind of a invisible web, I think, when you're connected to people, that some kind of information is like communicated through it when something really eventful is happening.
I feel like there has to be. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I've had like a few odd things happen as well, to where like I believe it. I don't know to what extent or like what it really means, but I feel like there's no way like there can't be some sort of connection. Just because like genetically, especially if you're related to someone, you know, there has to be some sort of like something.
Oh yeah, it's like when they say like a mother's intuition or something. I saw that with my mom. She would just know. She'd be like, I need to call Jenna. Something's wrong. And she called Jenna, and sure enough, there was like, she got in a car wreck or something had happened, and she just knew.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing. But I mean, like, if that's your child too, I feel like it's got to be like the strongest, like, connection, you know?
Yeah. I found that stuff so fascinating.
It is. Are there any studies on that, I wonder? Like, to even...
I looked into it a lot, and there's some cool books out there where they do compile kind of like the, what do they call it? It's not the word supernatural, but it is... I forgot the word.
Is it like an energy thing, kind of, or like?
Yeah, it was something that encapsulates kind of like the dark space of science, where they call it like, it's still pseudoscience because they can't really measure and study it well enough to categorize it as normal science. It's hard to put into a lab. I mean, how do you monitor someone enough for something that rare? Like that's a pretty rare experience for me to have. How do you monitor that to like pick up when it happens and have any kind of data other than stories we tell each other?
I guess like maybe if you have someone who's like a psychic, or like, you know, they've been proven to get a lot of things right, you know, maybe studying someone like that and seeing like how that works. Do you think that's a thing?
So there is. There was a book called God damn, I'm so bad at remembering names. I'll look it up and send it to you later.
No, for sure.
But they did have a collection of things where they attempted to study some of these things. And they studied basically these I don't know if it's Kundalini or some kind of yoga meditation experts, where they did it on the daily. They had really zoned into it as a skill. So
they meditated into like being able to be like psychic?
Well, it was more like they would get their mind into this low vibrational state, and they'd be able to maintain it for longer periods of time.
Is there a name for that? Is it like beta?
Yeah, it was like delta waves or beta waves I think, I don't know the specifics, but it was something like that.
I literally don't know what I'm saying, guys.
But like, you know, like anything, I think if you do something enough, you can almost develop a skill out of it.
Sure.
And they would do this intentionally, and so he decided to get them and bring them into kind of the lab and get them to focus on, either go, I want y'all to focus on each other. Like, picture their face, think about how they make you feel, think about all the experiences you've had together. Y'all know each other. And I want you to get into this deep mind state and sustain it as long as you can. And he separated them into rooms. They did it before, I think, and they did it after. He's like, now keep thinking about each other. And one room completely isolated from the other, where you couldn't hear sound, you couldn't see light. They were electromagnetically, I think they had certain barriers. And in one room, they would do a strobe light. And in the other room, either no light or just a solid light. And they noticed that in the person in one room, the part of their brain that was associated with light input or something would light up, of course, and then the other room where there was none, it would like start faintly lighting up.
No, that's crazy.
And again, I could be butchering that, and I don't know all the details, but it was in this book that I thought was very interesting. Yeah.
This friend of mine, he is friends with the guy from Lone Survivor. Like, they went and did like they went and did iBeginning together, which apparently is like I don't know if you're...
iBegan?
Yeah.
Yeah. My buddy's brother did it.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, a lot of people are like, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So basically, they went to do this thing, like, together, the two of them. They were, like, pretty bonded already, but apparently, like, they both, I guess, went to sleep. I'm not sure what happens when you do it, but they just, like, weren't, like conscious like me and you right now.
Right.
And they went into this state of, like, my friend, he started, like, working through his trauma, I guess, like, internally, but one thing that happened was, I guess he was getting attacked by something or someone, right?
Okay.
And then I guess in his vision or dream, Marcus saved him. They get up from, like, their trip, I don't know what you would call it, the, like, experience.
Yeah.
Marcus turns to him immediately and says, aren't you glad I saved you from that? And, like, just knew, like, crazy.
Oh, wow.
And ever since they did that, like, now they have this really strong intuition for each other. Like, it's crazy, but, like, wow. I've, like, talked to them both, and, like, they don't strike me as the kind of person to just make that up. I believe them fully, like, no reason to lie, so it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like invisible entanglements.
Honestly, yeah. Like, maybe it, like, opens a different part of our brain, because we only use a certain percentage, they say, so maybe it, like, enlightens, like, you know?
My grandmother, I think, opened my mind to a lot of this stuff when I was a kid. She was real ahead of her time. I mean, stuff that's, like, getting popular now and kind of that space, or even on the internet, is stuff she was telling me, like, in the early 90s
what
when
was
I
she
was
saying?
a kid.
Do you remember?
She was, all kinds of stuff. Like, she was real ahead with just even supplemental kind of things that become, you know, there's always, like, diet fads and trends and things that turn out to be really important. Like, she was telling me vitamin D was, like, a super important supplement, like, back in the early 90s when no one else was really pushing that. Now it's, like, a no-brainer for a lot of people to make part of the regimen. Same thing with many other things like ashwagandha and stuff like that.
She knew about that
before it was popular.
Wow.
Yeah.
How? Like, did she?
She was just a part of these real niche kind of. It wasn't like it was hippie-ish, but she wasn't a hippie. She was just real into like holistic health stuff. Yeah. And she was like a chiropractor at the time.
I think people just called it that back then because they didn't know how to classify it.
Yeah.
As being, you know, progressive.
Or it'd be called like snake oil, you know, because you know, some of it was bullshit, but they were still. Again, she was still kind of on the path of like trying to find stuff that was like natural remedies and stuff like that. Anything
that's not big pharma can be classified as snake oil.
Right.
When they're not making money, they're gonna like probably share it, you know?
Yeah. So she had this. I guess one story I remember her telling me of many was when Aunt Jenny was young, and she always said Aunt Jenny was kind of in tune with something else, and that's why eventually she became kind of schizophrenic, where she was just very open in her mind. And when she said she was like 4 or 5 years old, very young. This is before cell phones, this is before GPS. My grandmother had to take some detour coming back from the other side of town, and something about the detour wasn't clear at the end of it, and she ends up in a bad side of town trying to find her way back to the highway to get back home. A side of town neither of them had been in, and she started getting kind of concerned, like, at the time of where she was at, just her and a young girl. And my Aunt Jenny, apparently at like 5 years old, started telling her where to go. She goes, that way. And my grandma takes her right, and she goes to the left, and she just started, okay, I don't know. And my grandma's real open to that stuff, so she just listened.
Which is great, honestly.
And she went, and sure enough, they got back to the highway.
Holy shit.
And she remembers being like, okay, we were not anywhere close to that, and we're not any road I've ever been on. Like, how as a 5-year-old would she know that?
That's wild. There's those stories about kids who, like, have, like, past lives and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, they remember, like, wars and whatnot. They're, like, reincarnated, so they say. But who knows? Have you seen those videos? It's like, they bring a kid around and introduce them to, like, this person that they talked about and described. It's, like, their friend from the war who's still alive, like, this older person. And it's, like,
no, I haven't seen that.
There's like videos of it. Like, I guess, for example, like this one kid would always talk about like the war and stuff like that, and like describe like a friend that they had, I guess, whatever. So they assumed this kid was like reincarnated in some way. So it goes, they like take the kid and introduce the kid. They like find this guy, and apparently like the guy starts crying, the kid starts crying. They have all this stuff in common. I don't know. So yeah, I could be butchering that too, but like I remember like hearing that story, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. There's interesting stuff there, and there's the tricky thing with that whole area is that people can so quickly discredit and dismiss stuff because there are kids who say stuff that seem crazy and, well, they just saw a movie I didn't realize that they saw, and so something, like, it's easily to explain away, and it's like, okay, it's not as deep as you think. But then there's these odd scenarios where it's like, no, there is something actually deeper to it. But
whatever it might be.
But people feel comfortable just dismissing all of it because there are other cases where it's like conspiracy theories, where it's like there are clearly conspiracies that are true.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And then there's a bunch that aren't. But it doesn't mean that it's still interesting to like find the ones that are real.
Yeah,
you know?
well, and the unknown is scary to some people, I think. So it's easier to just like write it all off than look deeper into it and maybe think that we don't know everything.
Right.
So do you think that's a thing though, reincarnation? Like, what do you think happens when people die?
I've asked myself that question a lot throughout my life, just different theories about like, what is a soul? Because I think if you believe in reincarnation, it really kind of, you almost have to take one step deeper to go, well, okay, well, what is a soul? Because if you believe in reincarnation, you believe some kind of a soul continues past the body, and is it like that kind of reincarnation, or more just exhibiting a similarity to something in the past?
I think it's like, I might be butchering this too, it's like a law of thermodynamics. I think that energy can't be like created or destroyed, just transferred. So I think that's why people assume when you die, like the energy goes somewhere, maybe like scientifically, who's to say? But I don't know.
So I guess I think like the form of reincarnation that I believe in, because I think there's a lot of different like versions of it. I think the version I tend to think is like closer to the truth is like, have you ever read any Carl Jung? So he has this thing called the archetypes, and it's basically this idea that there are these ways of being that, like, for example, like the hero or the villain or the king, the jester, and when you find like in the modern world or the ancient world or medieval times, like those archetypes kind of play themselves out in different forms of the same story over and over and over again. And the archetype itself actually outlives the person. So even if the actual person dies, the thing that they were like manifested as or reincarnated as is like the same thing that lived on in another time. Like in the Bible they would call it like, oh, the Elijah the prophet is back. Like it would be like another reincarnation of the same like form, even though maybe genetically he's a little different or he's this and that, but it's kind of the same spirit, if you will, that carried on and reformed. So I think there's like some loose interpretation of that I do believe in. It's just when people get into like the real hard specifics of like, that's that exact person, but you're not even the same person you were when you, like 5 years ago.
Absolutely not.
Right? So it's like, okay, well, if I reincarnated across a few lifetimes, I might be like a version of what lived before, but I'm still going to be different, just like I am in my own life. Like I'm different now than I was when I was 20 or when I was 15.
Yeah, like I wonder if you do get reincarnated, like what version of yourself it would be, or like if it's you as a baby or like old, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's so interesting to think. I never thought about that.
So I think you do. I just think it's just it is as different then as you are at a later time in your life versus a younger time in your life.
It's actually so interesting. I've never like thought about it from that perspective. Are you religious now still?
I wouldn't say religious, like not in any kind of like practicing sense, but I was raised religious, and so a lot of the like fundamentals of like that way of being and thinking are pretty hardwired into me. So I think instinctively I kind of am, but I don't go to church and I don't kind of do any kind of practices other than maybe some mental things. Maybe more curious and spiritual, if that makes sense.
Same, for sure.
But also skeptical at the same time.
Very much same, Are there any, like, parts of organized religion that you feel you've kind of separated from as you got older or kind of grown out of?
Absolutely.
Likewise.
I think, I'm curious what yours are, too. I think I grew away from very rigid parameters about what is true, because I found that I feel like people will say God said this or God did this or God fill in the blank, and it's like people did that what are you talking about? People wrote that. Like, I get it in a loose sense they're saying that through those people God acted or whatever. But when you really like chase things down to the root, like there's a simpler explanation. Like people did a lot of things and then they ascribe it to God, and it's just this weird leap where like people put so much faith in something that you wouldn't have that amount of faith in someone trying to sell you a car. Like you would ask more questions. You'd be like, if I just said, hey, this house is good, I'm going to sell it to you, you'd still hire an inspector.
100%,
you'd still consult with the real estate.
Do you like your due diligence?
Yeah, but yet I found very religious people, they'll kind of put their skepticism on the shelf when it comes to something that was written thousands of years ago. It's like, that's when you should be even more scrutinizing.
Sounds pretty outlandish. Like, not, to like shit on religion at all.
No.
It, like, it does sound like some of this stuff like a little crazy. Like if you were to read it in just like a book and not in a Bible or something,
Right.
Like it would be open to a little bit of like, let's look into this further. Yeah,
you would, you'd think you'd have more scrutiny the further you're removed from something rather than less. And so I think that mixed with, I think I came full circle with a lot of stuff, even in the Bible, where it's like the stuff that I still keep and I didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater is like stuff that works in real time in real life. Like, so if it says love your neighbor as yourself, I can practice that and see the results of that, and then I can prove it to be true.
Sure.
That creates for a more flourished environment and a better life.
Yeah.
But when it comes to other stuff where it's like these very specific claims about stuff you can't really prove one way or another, that to me is all up for debate and kind of a mental exercise. It's just not real life, I
agree. And I mean, I think maybe like the reason people blindly believe stuff sometimes might be out of fear. Again, like of the unknown,
Oh, yeah.
And it gives them that security. So, I mean, I guess whatever does it for you. But for me, like, I just feel like I've always been very inquisitive and kind of wondered about stuff like that and wanted to like have more proof, I guess.
Yeah. And I, I like my Baba, she's, one of the most important people in my life. It's my grandma on my dad's side. And her name's Baba, by the way, because she picked she went through a grandmother's names book where it had in all these different languages, and she picked the one that would be the easiest for a baby to say, so her name would be the first.
Wait, I love that. Honestly, so smart.
Right?
That's so cute too.
But she's very religious, and she's one of the best human beings I know. And I've had these conversations with her, and it took me years to kind of muster up the courage to, because I didn't want there to be like a distance that was created. Sure. But at the end of the day, I was like, I don't want one day, if you're gone, you have known a fake version of me. I want you to know me for what I actually think.
I'm sure she valued that.
And honestly, it turned out great. And she, at the end of the day, she's like, this is what I believe, and it's served me well my entire life. I'm not really going to change it now.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, I respect that.
Completely
I understand
valid,
that.
100%.
And it served her very well, and that's really the end of it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, the way I see it is like whatever makes you a better person, whatever like gives you that security, whatever makes you do the right thing, whatever that is, whether it's like morals or religion or whatever,
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. But,
yeah, I think it's only when it comes to like public policies or things that affect other people that maybe you just should be honest. Like if you are religious, to just be honest with yourself about, okay, how certain really are you of that? And then you're now going to be voting about something that affects other people.
Right.
Maybe pump the brakes a little bit, or that's when I think there's conflict that starts up.
Yeah,
with
or
people.
when it's used to like what's the word, like superiority over someone else, like saying like a certain like religion is better than another one, which was kind of like my hang up on it. Is like growing up, I always heard it as more of like a superiority thing, and that's what put me off to it initially. Is like, well, I don't feel like we're actually better than anyone,
Yeah.
So that was like kind of what it was for me.
A lot of people use it that way.
Yeah, which is crazy because it's supposed to be the opposite from what I understand,
Yeah.
But, yeah. That's kind of like where I was unsure for the most part.
I think that's a common experience too, like what you're saying, where I experienced that as well, where my mom was, she had a really bad cancer and passed away a while back in my early 20s. And we went to this crazy church at one point where she basically was given a death sentence by the doctors. Like she'd gone to multiple specialists, and it was just kind of like look, you have an extremely rare aggressive form of cancer that chemo and radiation just doesn't work on. So as a family at the time, we were, pretty shattered at first, but we went on kind of a journey with her just to support her in whatever way she wanted to handle this. Mm-hmm. And I remember no one was giving any answers, so the only people giving an answer was this really extreme church. Mm-hmm. And I think at the time I kind of almost held it against my mom and dad at first, because I was like, it felt odd or weird. But then as I got older, I was like, she would have done anything for her kids. She's like, I'm not going to rule anything out. And the crazy thing was, we went to this very, it was like a faith healing church.
Okay.
And she had heard stories of people being healed of weird ailments. And here was the weird thing.
Yeah.
She went to a service and she's like, I'm at the end of my rope. I have 3 young kids. Mm. I will do anything to beat this. And doctors give me no answers. Yeah. So she had one of those experiences. Like they said, in the name of Jesus, you're healed. And she's like, I was not faking anything. I'm not that kind of person to go there and put on a show and shake. But her whole body shook and it felt like electricity. And looking back now, I really think it had to do probably with her heightened emotional state, with just the stakes were so high that she was like open, like when we're talking like energetically or mentally. And her body or God, whatever you want to believe, did something. Wow. And she went back, the scans were clean for like a year.
Holy shit.
Completely. So here was the weird part of this journey, was that made her, and I think my dad was more in a supportive role, but that made her go, well, clearly there's something to this, so I'm going to double down on this, because wherever else I go, they're giving me zero answers.
Fair enough, to be honest.
And so that's kind of how we felt. We're like, okay, this church is kind of weird. These people are kind of strange. It's kind of culty. Yeah. But, we're just here to support you. We love you, and we got your back.
Whatever works, yeah.
And so we went to that church more and more, and it just got weirder and weirder. It's the closest thing I've ever experienced to a cult.
Like, what would happen?
I'll give you an example. I walked into like a youth thing on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
We had that
like a young life moment.
Yeah, we had the church I grew up in was CBC in San Antonio. Great church, non-denominational, really, vanilla, kind of nice. We'd go in and listen to music and we'd have fun and socialize, right? And this church, I walked in, everyone in the room except one guy who was the guitar player in the band, and everyone, it was like maybe 60 to 70 people, shaking while they're walking, like, praise Jesus, and they're doing that shit, and they have this look in their eye, like just a blank stare. And I'm like, of course, in my mind, I'm like, okay, y'all are all playing follow the leader here, and this is some kind of weird like virtue signaling, like you don't want to be the one who's not shaking Jesus shit. I was like, this is fucking weird.
That's happening to me too.
And so I go and I'm like, okay, and I go sit down next to this guitar player Gil, and I look at him. I'm like, so is any of this strange to you, or like, do you really think this is what they think it is? And he goes, yeah, they're just following the Spirit. And in the Lord, he said something like, and I'm like, oh shit, you too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm the only one
like in a
here.
scary movie, they just have the blank stare too. You're like, fuck.
And I'm like, I thought he'd be like someone who's kind of a little clear-headed. Yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, he drank the juice too. And then I was like, from that moment on, I'm just like, this is like clearly some kind of a weird. So every time, like, and I was only there to support my mom.
Sure.
So I'd go up and I'd just be like, fuck this motherfucker. I think about the pastor speaking. I'm like, this is just such bullshit. Nobody's eating it up. And they would all kind of, I don't know, they treated him like a superstar. It was a weird culty thing. And so he'd come over to people and like touch them and do this thing, and they'd all have these experiences. And I'm like, come touch me on the head, motherfucker. And he'd look at me and he's like, I knew he just had this look of like, it's not going to work on him.
He's like, I'm not that.
And I'm like, I'm not playing follow the leader and all this bullshit. So,
did you ever have the thought to like let him try to see what would happen?
At the beginning, I was open-minded. I was like, I'd love to have this crazy experience.
Yeah.
But I also am still very skeptical, and I'm very aware of like human nature and how people can easily play to people's emotions.
100%.
And of course, so as my mom it came back a year later, or so, year and a half, something like that, and it came back worse. And this was like a concerning thing, but also kind of predictable from some of the scientific point of view, where they're like, there are spontaneous remissions and we can't explain why that happened, and it correlated with that experience she had, even though we can't explain that, in our experience, it does come back. So sure enough, it did come back, and my mom doubled down. And sorry, this gives me a little emotional when I think about it, but my family, just kind of doubled down to support her, and I was just so torn because I was like, I don't believe any of this shit, and I don't want them to like get her hopes up in such a vulnerable time. So I just got angrier and angrier because I felt like they were toying with my mom's head or something, and I started getting that instinct of protection, like I want to kill these motherfuckers. Like I was starting to get
just
to
like so
that
much
point.
love that it's like you just want to protect her to some extent.
And so it started turning into that, and I was like, you know what, my mom's just doubling down. There's nothing I can do about it. So I just remember one time it like gotten real bad, and she was clearly getting worse, and I was like, but she's like being more delusional about it. And so I was like, I don't know what to say anymore. And we're sitting there. She's now in a wheelchair at this point. We're sitting outside, and she's like holding my hand, and she's like, I just need you to believe. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I can't, because I don't believe that you're going to get better. Like, I think we need to get at peace with this, you know? And so I just sat there and didn't say anything. And I was just like, I love you, you know? And so that was... anyway, so then sorry.
I mean that's completely like understandable to feel that way. That's traumatic. It's someone you care a ton about, and that's a lot for someone to go through. You know what I mean? Like I feel that I would feel similarly, you know, like torn. Like you want to be supportive, but you're also like a realist, and you don't want someone to have false hope. And it's like you kind of do, because you don't want them to be scared. It's like it's I can understand how that would be conflicting. You know? And
you know, and in the end, it's like, okay, where's their magic Jesus powers now? This is when you need it, you know. And I'm like, put your fucking money where your mouth is, church. You know, where's the pastor? And as she's like on her deathbed, I'm like, he's not even here. That motherfucker's not even here. You know, yet he got money from y'all. He got money from everyone else. So in my head, and in the way that they were gonna write this whole story off to them and their congregation is like, well, the Bible's true whether you do it or not, so she clearly just didn't have enough faith. And I'm like, oh no, she had more faith than any of y'all. Like, I saw her day to day, like,
and how can anyone else quantify the amount of faith someone has? That's absurd. You know what I mean? Like, how can they speak on that?
I'm like, the more likely explanation is you're playing to people's emotions with a little, got one little good trick, but there's no sustainability to this trick. You're just...
So then you gotta, like, write it off and, like, play it off on, like, someone else.
Right. Because your whole, like, theory would fall apart, like, if you pull that cornerstone out from them. Anyway, I had these fantasies at the time of, like... dressing up as Jesus, like in a loincloth, and like with the you know,
the little thing,
what is it called, the crown of thorns, and coming in with a whip, a cat o' nine tails. So in the cat o' nine tails back in the day, it was like a whip that had like metal rocks and metal and glass shards, things that were very sharp. And I was like, I wanted to just show up and start beating some motherfuckers, like, and go to jail, get it all on TV, and be like, because I was at such an edge where I'm like, you don't fuck with my mom. You know what I mean? I was like, that's what Jesus would have done, you know, because he did that in the Bible. Honestly, he showed up with a whip and he fucking knocked shit over. People forget about that part in the Bible. Like, he wasn't always a nice guy.
But it's like, it's the protective nature though too. You know what I mean? That's someone you care about so much. Like, you know, I completely understand that, and it's like probably such a helpless feeling.
So maybe one day I'll do that when I have less to lose.
Maybe someday when you're ready to retire from music, you're like,
I'll be like, I'm gonna go on a field trip.
Goes back, like, I'll go with you. I'm like,
what's
honestly,
up, motherfuckers? I'm back.
I'll record it for the media.
For Jesus is back, and he's pissed.
Just a movie, like, turns into a script. But no, in all seriousness, like, I'm very fucking sorry. Like, that sounds extremely difficult and painful, and I'm very sorry that happened.
It's good now. It's, you know, it was a powerful experience, and, you know, I had, even though it was dark, there were experiences and moments I had with my mom that I would have never had otherwise, that were just, like, transformative, and I'll never forget. And I saw qualities in her that were so admirable that, like, I can just take so much strength and power into the future, and just from what she showed me and demonstrated.
That's
she was
beautiful.
very strong through it.
100%. What is your goal for the future? Like, what does happiness mean to you ultimately? Like, in the day?
What does happiness mean?
And what's your favorite tour story? Just kidding.
For me, I've noticed I'm the happiest when I have just like a series of things coming up, and like I'm very accomplishment oriented.
Yeah.
So if I'm accomplishing stuff, I'm usually pretty happy. If I just sit in a void, like even when I'm on vacation, like the first few days, I don't even really enjoy it that much. It takes me like a few days to kind of unwind and actually vacation.
Just talking about that, my friend and I'm like, dude, I feel weird. Just sitting, like I don't know. I feel like I'm like falling behind on something, you know? But yeah.
So for me, I think everybody's different. There's some people who can just really, really chill and they enjoy that. I can chill really hard when I've accomplished a lot, and then I'd like to chill hard and binge a TV show or something. So I think happiness is balance. It's like the perfect balance of accomplishment and goals and growth with like having a nice, comfortable like home setup, which I have now. I've moved to Nashville and I absolutely love it. So to me, it's just balance. That's happiness.
For sure. Do you think you want a family eventually?
I've asked myself this question a lot. I think because I never really, it just wasn't an important question to me for a long time, but I guess, I don't know. I guess when you get, as a dude, I don't know, it's somewhere in my 40s, I'm approaching that, I'm 37. If I get in my mid to late 40s, I might be like, should I have a kid? I don't know. I'm asking that question. I don't really have a drive to. I've never been like I want a family guy. Yeah,
I feel like societally they kind of like say that you should, but maybe some people, you don't have to by any means. Like,
I mean, I think the last part of your life will be maybe more empty, and I think that's why a lot of people consider it. But I don't know. My question right now, my answer right now is I don't know.
Likewise.
I'm open to it, but I'm not pushing for it.
Sure. No, people say that to me. They're like, oh, like, do you think that's what you want? Because I'm 31 right now, right? And a lot of my friends are stressed. They're like, oh my God, am I going to meet someone? It's like, why don't you just be happy within yourself? Like grow your own life. And if it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But like, why force something? Because like everyone that I know that got married young, they're getting divorced. You know what I mean? Like for the most part, because you change so much. And like they did it out of like scarcity mindset almost.
That's what's so tricky. I think right now specifically, like in 2024, I think we're all asking the same question because we watched the generation before us. They fucked it up. Like so many of them, with the exception, my parents were actually one of the lucky ones where they just had an amazing relationship and was a very good example. But that's almost the exception to the rule now. Like most people had watched parents get divorced or grew up in a divorced home, and people watch the people who get married young, which is like the older generation solution, like my grandma's age. They would get married young and it worked for them. But that doesn't seem to be working now. Like people who get married really young usually get divorced or there's like some major problems later. But then the people who just push off stuff so late, then they get into like a weird dynamic within themselves and other people where it's like, well, now I'm with people who've already been married, or they have, it's just a different thing than when
some baggage, like a kid or two, which nothing wrong with that. But like,
right. So I don't think there's like a clean, good answer in 2024. I think the best answer is just, like you said, like, just focus on you being a good person and a better person and happy, and that usually attracts good people and good things.
Agreed.
And then you let it unfold naturally.
Yeah. No, I think people want to sometimes like fill a void in themselves with someone else, but then it's like, well, if they ever leave, you're just like miserable and in shambles. You got to like fix yourself first. In my opinion.
Yeah. Building that person into kind of the cornerstone of your or your frame around it. It's like, yes, you kind of have to work functional things in your life around another person if you're in a relationship.
Like basing your whole like happiness and well-being around someone is, I mean, in the past when I was younger, like I definitely was in a relationship like that, and I was like, damn, like you kind of forget who you are outside of it too, which definitely don't want to do that. So
yeah, that's I think it's a natural slippery slope that most people experience at some point, right? Where you just kind of slide into it and you're like, whoa, there's like, I'm like all about, I'm kind of just been absorbed into this other person.
Yeah.
And then you wake up one day and you're just like, oh shit, you either feel like you lost yourself or you kind of, you're like too deep in now and you're like, I don't know if I really like this as much as where I like was, but now turning back looks so far away.
Exactly. And like daunting too.
Right.
Well, what is next for you guys? I know you just had an album come out, or you have a tour coming up as well.
What's next? We got a U.S. tour in September. So in September, we're touring with Set It Off, From Ashes to New, and Post Profit.
Hell yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great tour.
I will say though, I've been feeling so old recently with like all the technology and stuff and AI. Like, there was a video the other day. It was like Joe Rogan, or no, it was Elon Musk. So I thought, on TikTok, and he was talking about like how eels migrate to the Bermuda Triangle because of this energetic thing, and I was like, oh yeah, shit, that's so cool, so interesting. All the comments are like, this is so obviously AI, like it's so obviously fake. I'm like, oh my god, I'm a Facebook mom now. This is crazy. I'm just believing everything. That's wild. I got
Facebook mom.
I got bamboozled. I'm like, oh no. That's I feel like one of the old people in the like Apple store learning to use an iPhone. I'm like, just the regression is so sad.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I see stuff now too where I'm like, it's so easy to see something and go, oh shit, is that for real? And you go, wait, is that real? Is this real?
Yeah.
Is that, you gotta like scan everything now.
I wonder if that's like how like parents felt, or like even grandparents when like social media started and stuff. Like, were they that like flabbergasted, like, oh shit, like, you know?
Oh yeah,
probably, right?
Oh my yeah. So my girlfriend, she lives out here in Nashville, and she told me a story where she was on an FBI watch list because she had this inside joke with them where they'd call her like Brooke the baby killer, or like Destroyer, or something. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And they had this little like cheesy graphic of her, like it was like a joke,
like so clearly not real.
Yeah, so clearly a joke, but because the internet was just still kind of like, they hadn't caught up with the fact that like that kind of humor with younger people is just like funny. They were like, is this person really like doing nefarious things? So she literally got put on a watch list.
How did you find out that you're on a watch list? Did they contact you and they're like, hey, we got our eye on you?
I forgot. She told me that there was...
Like, do you get a letter? I wonder, like, I really wonder.
I don't know if it had to do with something she was like applying for something, like whether it was a passport or an ID or something. I can't remember that part.
That's crazy. Like, imagine finding that out. I don't know how it even like react.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus Christ. I guess that's a good thing that they're watching, but like,
yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm on a watch list at this point. What should I say? I mean, I have like very dark humor. Like, I'm very, anti-establishment, and so I, of course, my dad worked for the government for many years, and he's been military and stuff. But we get along great. But I'll say stuff, and then I'll lift up my phone and be like, and that was a joke for the record.
So you're
I know you're listening.
Literally, 100%. I mean, I'm sure they are, honestly.
Oh, they're absolutely. I mean, they is always the question of who they are. But I know for a fact I've said some stuff, and my phone just pops up, ads or things where it's like, okay, that's exactly what I was talking about. 100%. I've never typed that in,
like, all the time.
Oh yeah.
I've like taken a deep dive into the JFK tapes recently. I've really been like,
my grandma sent me a JFK thing. I'll send it to you.
No.
Like, I was literally talking to my grandma about this.
No way.
It was called it's like something is a rich people's trick. Or a rich people's game, or
was
something.
Was it the one speech that he did about like secret societies or something? Because Rogan was talking about that the other day.
Oh no, this one's like a short little mini documentary thing. I haven't watched it. I just started it, but my grandma was like all like interested in it. I was like, I can't believe you're watching this. I was like, send it to me.
That's sick. Yeah, I talked to my friend who was like in the depths of the military, like had all these clearances. I'm like, you could tell me, like, what's up, James? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know there's more to it. Like, why'd they really kill him? And he actually told me, like, he gave me an explanation. I don't know if I can say. I don't know.
Well, you know what's crazy? Sorry, on that note, I don't know if you or people listening remember, but I believe Trump, when he was going into office, he said that he was going to release classified documents on UFOs and JFK, and everybody was like, hell yeah.
Hell yeah, brother.
My man. Like, because that's like, everybody wants to know.
Yeah.
And he didn't release, he unclassified some UFO stuff, but not the JFK stuff. And I think, don't quote me on this, but look it up, I think that the reason was because if they released it, there was going to be a civil war. Like, they were afraid of starting a civil war. Yeah. So that in and of itself should tell you something.
Yeah.
Right?
From what I recall, and like, this is kind of recent because I said I've been like in a dark, like deep dive into this, just like hyper fixated. But he said that the reason he didn't, like his like I guess quote was, I saw it and like you guys like aren't ready to know what was on the tapes or whatever. So my friend initially told me it's because like people are still alive who are associated with the killing.
Right, that makes sense.
But like recently on the phone, recently on the phone, he gave me more of a reason that made a lot more sense. But I don't know if I can even like say it because he has like all these classifications. And
I get it.
Yeah, I don't know who's to say, but
yeah, I heard
it die too.
I heard one that I'll tell you off air because it's a person I know personally, and it would. I mean. I hate doing that on a podcast. I hate
a cliffhanger.
I hate doing that, but there's one piece of information I'll tell you that's very interesting. But it's too personal and connected that it's like a clearance thing.
Sure.
But I will say, I'll give you one though. Well, I can't give that one.
Yeah, and after I'll tell you what he said too, because it's really fucking interesting.
Yeah. It was one that was always funny to me. So my dad, growing up, he was a captain in the Army, and then he got out of the Army to go to the Department of Defense, and basically just intelligence. And my sister was being born. He didn't want to be deployed, so he's been in intelligence for 20 something years. And I remember I just gotten out of high school or something. I was like back at home and I was eating some Cheerios or something on a Saturday morning. And there was some little thing that came on TV, and I think there was a UFO or something. And he looked at me and he goes, just curious. He's like, do you believe in aliens? Or, you know, because UFOs doesn't necessarily mean aliens, but it implies it for a lot of people. And I go, oh, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's other life, but, you know, are there aliens here? I don't have any reason to believe it necessarily yet, but I'm open-minded, but I don't know. And he was like, And I go, what do you mean? What do you think? And he's just like, And then that was all I got. And he walked off. And now keep in mind, he like where he worked every day, like I went for Christmas one time and you go in, it's like multiple clearances to get through this door, through the next door. Every room had a red light on top, so if there was a breach, every file cabinet had a giant lock on it. Like if there was a breach, everything had to be shut down, so no windows anywhere. It was all, you know, controlled intelligence stuff. So, and of course, it's just a fun little anecdote, but I just always thought that was funny.
That's interesting. Yeah. Funny enough, Anthony, when he was on the podcast, I think last time, he brought up, like, I think we talked about this too, like something similar. But he was saying there's a video of this guy who had a bunch of clearances and he was like on his deathbed or something. And he ends up admitting that there are like extraterrestrials and all this stuff, and then just dies. And I'm like, well, did he say when they're coming or where they're at? He's like, no. I'm like, well, what do you, that sucks. I'm like, damn, I'd be pissed. Like, I was gonna die anyway. Like, I'm like, come on, guy. Like, you can't do better than that. Like,
right. Give us
you're
more
like,
than that.
Just dies. I'm like, come on. Like, where are they at? Like, come on. But
right. I wish people could unite over something like positive and like mutually interesting, like aliens. You know, like remember the whole Storm Area 51 thing?
Dude,
it's kind of hilarious, but it's like that's so much more fun than all the divisive stuff we seem to get like attached to.
Talking about like the Naruto runners like running into Area 51 and storming it. Like in my hometown where I still lived at the time, we had an Area 51 party at a strip club. And we all dressed like aliens.
That's amazing.
And my friend owned it, so we were just like at the bar, like alien masks, just like dressed like, it was a good time.
That's dope.
Yeah. It really did bring everyone together, honestly. We need another thing like that. Maybe not storming Area 51, but like another, like planking. Those were simpler times, you know? Like, bring that back, honestly. But,
real.
Thank you for coming on. We covered a wide array of topics. It was a really good one, as anticipated.
Thank you for having me. It was
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and like, subscribe. And obviously, he's going on tour. Buy tickets. Go see them in person. And love you so much. See you next time.
Bye.
Hell yeah.